Good morning. It's May 2nd, 2022. This is To My Liberal Friends, and I'm John Haddo. How many listening to this podcast think that student debt should be canceled? Before you answer that question, I want to give you some facts that you should consider. Because this is the hot topic, and Democrats are bound and determined to get in this game and try to buy votes. Since the pandemic started, the government has repeatedly extended the moratorium on repaying student loans and not allowed any interest to accrue. This change in policy has cost the government $100 billion and counting. And this is the money that Congress has not appropriated, so where does the money come from? Now Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats want to compound that problem by writing off the student loans and billing the taxpayers for this politically motivated largesse. Federal student loans, loans guaranteed by the government to lenders, were established in the 1960s by the Johnson administration's Great Society. They were designed to help low-income students go to college, but like so many government programs that start out with some noble idea, Democrats in Congress have repeatedly expanded the program and turned student loans into a form of entitlement for academia and the affluent. In 2010, Democrats nationalized the student loan market, eliminating guarantee fees for private lenders and using the, quote, savings to pay for Obamacare. They also created income-based repayment plans, allowing future borrowers to limit their monthly payments to 10% of their discretionary income. I like to know who decides what's discretionary and what's not, and discharge their remaining debt after 10 to 20 years. Next, they might consider applying this logic to car payments and house mortgages. Pay a little for a few years, then have the government come in and take over the debt. If it's good enough for student loans, it's good enough for cars and houses. But if we're being honest, most borrowers don't really need debt relief, but the current program is a blatant move by Democrats to buy themselves some political benefit before the midterms, which every poll out there shows them being crushed because the average American is tired of their progressive policies that have brought increases in crime, inflation, gas prices are up, food prices are skyrocketing, and massive illegal immigration on the southern border. They're hoping this sop to the younger generation will motivate them to come out and vote for Democrats as a way of thanking them for this handout. What Biden would like to do is make this incremental. He'll forgive some of your loan debt this year, and if you keep he and his fellow Democrats in power, he'll forgive more of your debt in the coming years. One of the problems in this belief is that you need to go to college to be successful. Now, I will grant you that a good education will always be beneficial to you, and not just economically. I can remember taking a humanities class, and I learned just enough for the good grade. And then I didn't pay attention. Well, later in life, I realized I really wanted to know that stuff, so I had to go back and relearn it. But the fact remains that about 25% of college graduates earn less than $30,000 a year. Way too many go to college and end up with degrees or skills that have no real value in the marketplace. They end up working low-end jobs. Our good friend, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a classic example. She graduated from Boston University and ends up as a bartender. If Joe Crowley had simply gone home to New York City to campaign, she would still be tending bar somewhere in New York and we wouldn't have to bother with her. But these kids that go to college universities and borrow more and more money, enjoying their lives as students without any consideration of how they're going to pay this money back. They're getting educated, and that's all that matters to them. They borrow thousands and thousands of dollars and come out of school with little or no marketable skills. For many, the next step is just head off to graduate school, borrow some more money, and this will fix all the problems. A master's in European history will certainly bring in multiple high-paying job offers, and they pile on more and more debt. Federal graduate debt is uncapped, and those in academia soon realized this and created new and more expensive graduate programs. According to the Wall Street Journal, the average borrower who completes a master's degree in film at New York University owed $113,180 and makes a mere $30,581 3 years after graduation. Now, how are they ever going to pay those loans off with a skill that obviously is never going to make them enough money? Another study showed that 40% of student debt out there is owed by 8% of the borrowers, and they're mostly doctors and lawyers. Are we to assume they're going to get their student debt canceled as well? I mean, we're talking about people making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases. What they should be doing is attacking the root problem. The cost of college continues to spiral upward, and nobody seems to ask why. Let me use an analogy. When my wife was working in the U.S. Senate, they, like a lot of employers, offered a public transit subsidy to get cars off the roads. This was true throughout the federal government in D.C. But every time the subsidy increased, the cost of the train ticket rose the exact same amount. I think we can draw a similar correlation to loans and costs. Every time the federal government increases the amount students can borrow, the cost of tuition and fees goes up. The schools know they can charge more because the students can borrow more. And as I've mentioned, they keep offering classes and majors that have no bearing on any marketable skills. Let me give you an example. Here in Utah, very conservative state, Westminster College, a private liberal arts school in Salt Lake City, is now offering a class on pornography films. You heard that right. Students will sit in class and watch porn. I hate to ask what the final exam will be, but what will they learn in that class will make them employable? I guess if they want to work in the adult film industry, it might be a positive. Finally, if you cancel this debt, there's some real questions that need to be asked before you answer the initial question I asked. Are you in favor of it? Will you refund the money to students who scrimped and paid their loans, or are they just considered dupes? Second, what about parents who did not buy new cars, did not go on fancy vacations to pay for their children's education? Do they get a refund? And more importantly, what about all the kids who learned a useful trade and did not go to college? You remember them, the ones the academic kids laughed at in school who now make good money as electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and mechanics. Do they have to pay taxes to reward the kids who got meaningless degrees and can't find real jobs? If you don't agree with this proposal, canceling student debt, do yourself a favor, pick up the phone, call your congressman and senator, tell them if they vote for this, they've lost your vote. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.